Hi there, Personal Health and Wellness. Welcome to Chapter 12, and this is our Cancer chapter. And congratulations, you made it to the final chapter in Module 1. And so I'm hoping that you're gathering all this information, you're seeing how these health problems are affecting you or could affect you, and you're building basically a case against them. And that's what I'm trying to do as your instructor, is to build that case against them so that you have complete buy-in when we talk to you about health solutions coming in Module 3. So to begin here, we are looking down from page 399 in your text, and we are talking about cancer. So first of all, what is cancer? Well, it's the uncontrolled growth and spread of abnormal cells. So there's a mutation. Something has happened to the normal cells, and now they are abnormal and they are growing and they are manifesting something typically known as a tumor in the body. It's also the second leading cause of death. So from chapter 1, we looked at the first leading cause of death as being cardiovascular disease. Now, number 2, cancer. And we have to understand that with these types of tumors that we talked about from here in the abnormal cells, there's a couple of different things that happen. Number 1 is those cells can kind of grow and be abnormal. They can also be what's known as benign. And that term just simply means slow growing, it's non-invasive, and typically non-cancerous. And so these are things that we sometimes see in folks who may have a tumor developing. And hopefully that's all we ever see. The next side of this, though, is that sometimes that abnormal cell growth is considered malignant. And that is that it's rapidly growing and it's very dangerous. And when it is, they will break that off into 4 stages. And I'm only going to tell you that stage 1 has the greatest chance of being treated successfully, going up to stage 4, where it doesn't have a lot of good treatment options. And so that's a very difficult diagnosis for a person to get. They make that diagnosis with something called a biopsy, which is typically a surgical procedure, but it doesn't always mean that you go to surgery. It can sometimes be done in an office setting, but they will go in and they will remove a part of that tumor, and then they will study that biopsied section and understand what it is about that is abnormal, and if it is indeed benign or malignant, and then they determine the course of action to take after that. So to understand that is great, but now let's talk about what actually causes cancer. And this is a lot more complex than one might would think. You have to understand that there are many cancer-causing agents in our environment, in our foods, in our workplace, in our home, things that we participate willingly with, and I'm talking about smoking, but these are all known as carcinogens, and these are the cancer-causing agents that we know cause cancer, and we have evidence that it causes cancer, but still we as the human race expose ourselves to those. There's another thing in this, and that is called the oncogene. And that is a gene that is in your body or my body, or that it predisposes us to having cancer. It's something that we know that we can look at our DNA and find out if we have a predisposition to that awful disease. And then the third thing I have down here is oncologist, and that is a doctor who specializes in cancer, and all they do is take care of people with cancer and study it. And so there is a difference between an oncogene and an oncologist, right? The person who studies it and then the gene inside of us. So very easy terms to remember. So let's start with skin cancer. Why? Because it's the most common. In fact, you probably know someone who has had some type of skin cancer, possibly on their ears, possibly on their face, maybe kind of in the back on the neck, but even going down for men, happening on the back where we don't see a lot of sunlight. And so when we do, it's in the summertime and we get a lot of it. And on the back is a very common place for skin cancers to occur. But one we think about is this mole skin cancer? Is this mark on my skin cancer? And so I wanted to throw the ABCDs out. And this is in your text. And so if you look in your text, it describes these more in detail. But simply asking these 4 questions: is there asymmetry about this mark on my skin, whether it's a mole or whatever it is, does it have asymmetry? Meaning, does one side look like the other? It should have a very unique shape all the way through that is symmetrical. The B is for border irregularity, and that's kind of like asymmetry. But is there like a thickness or a thinness to one side versus the other? Your color of that mark may have a lot to do with it. And so you look in your book and understand what those colors mean. Diameter, does that diameter change? And is it growing? Page 405 has all of these things. And the last thing I want to leave you with on skin cancer is to say the best way to avoid it is to limit the UV rays that you come in contact with. Now, that happens through either not exposing yourself at all. You're inside all the time. Well, that's no fun because then you don't get vitamin D, and we all love the fun in the sun. But also, perhaps not going to someplace like a tanning bed. And please do not, if you have a tanning bed, do not think that I'm harping on you too hard. But listen, this is a very real risk. And the other thing is using, and I'm saying this officially, using sunscreen. The risk of not using sunscreen is so much higher for skin cancer than the risk of using sunscreen. There has been several articles come out that want to suggest that sunscreen is causing cancer. I would tell you that research is not very good. And looking at it from a meta-analysis standpoint, you need to always consider using sunscreen. And the way you use sunscreen is you apply a 30 SPF or higher every 2 hours. That is what the book will tell you is minimal for protection. Next, other cancers. We look at lung cancer as being the leading killer of people with cancers. And the unique thing is smoking causes 50% of all those deaths to occur, or is linked to the deaths that happen in lung cancer. Breast cancer is the leading cancer in women, obviously, but it's followed very closely with ovarian, uterine, and cervical. The prostate cancer in men is astounding. Why? Because men refuse to go get that checked. It's not a comfortable check to have, and they just don't want to do it. And so by the time they find out they've had it, it's a big deal. And it does kill men. Quite a few if you look at the stats in the book. Also with men, testicular cancer. And this again is something that they will defer. They just say, you know what, I'm not going to get that checked. I'm not going to worry about it. Maybe it'll go away. And I know that you've probably ignored something in your life thinking it would go away. And guess what? It doesn't. Well, maybe it does. But colon and rectal cancer are the next ones. Again, these are probably the most treatable of all the cancers that we have listed here. We see a lot of success with both of those. And now pancreatic cancer is a different story in and of its own because it's very late typically to be detected. That is a very rapid malignant cancer that can spread to a lot of different things because of the pancreas's location in the middle of the thoracic cavity. And then the last one is leukemia, and that is a cancer of the bone marrow. So these aren't all the cancers out there. Please don't think that that's it. This is just a small sample to make you aware. So to go forward, we want to reduce our risks of cancer. And here's your list. And this is probably something you could have predicted it to be. But smoking cessation, that means you stop smoking. That means you drink less. We have found numerous connections to high alcohol volume intake to cancer. And so what we're saying is maybe you should remit a little bit of that alcohol intake. Avoiding drugs, we're going to connect marijuana directly with a primary cancer in the next module, and I hope that that helps you to understand why marijuana is not a good choice. Watching body composition, we're going to talk about that through chapter 6 and then all the way through the final module. Exercise, that's what's coming in module 3, and we're going to talk about how that reduces the risk of cancer when we get to it. Eating well, again, that's back in nutrition on the fourth module, and then managing your stress. We know that if you manage your stress appropriately, that you choose to view it as a challenge addressed body skill as opposed to just a negative thing, that it's a great thing. And then again, limit that exposure to UV. I hope you've enjoyed this chapter. I'll see you soon.